The church bells rang that afternoon, their heavy sound echoing across the small Michigan town where I had lived my entire life. I stood near the front pew, straightening my old suit jacket, brushing invisible dust from the lapels. At 68 years old, the body doesn't fit neatly into clothes the way it used to. My shoulders felt heavier, my hands more weathered. I've spent most of my life working with wood, building houses, fixing furniture, carving small toys for my children when they were little. Calluses are like permanent scars that no soap can wash away. Today, though, I wasn't Henry the carpenter. I was Henry Caldwell, proud father of the bride. Or at least, I thought I was proud. The aisle was draped in soft white fabric, roses pinned to the pews, their fragrance mixing with the faint smell of old hymn books. My daughter Emily looked like a picture from a wedding magazine. Her gown shimmered under the sunlight pouring through the stained glass windows. Guests leaned in close, snapping photos with their phones, whispering about how beautiful she was, how lucky her groom must be. And I believed it too, until my granddaughter tugged on my sleeve. Her grip was small, but urgent. Sophie was only 10, dressed in a pale yellow dress that matched the spring flowers decorating the church. Her hair, tied into neat braids, framed a face too serious for a child her age. She leaned close, so close I could feel her breath against my ear, and whispered words that froze the blood in my veins. "Grandpa, you have to stop this wedding." At first, I thought she was joking. Kids get nervous at weddings. Maybe she didn't like her soon-to-be stepdad, or maybe she just wanted attention. But when I turned to look at her, I saw something I'll never forget. Her wide eyes filled with tears, her lips trembling as though she'd been holding a heavy secret for too long. I bent slightly, resting a hand on her shoulder. "Sweetheart, what do you mean? Why would I stop it?" Her voice cracked, but she pushed out the words. "Because Mom isn't who you think she is. She's lying. If you don't stop this, everything will go wrong. The police will come. You'll see." I almost laughed, because it sounded impossible. "Emily. My Emily. The little girl I raised after my wife died, the same girl who clung to me when thunder shook the house, the one whose school projects I stayed up helping with, whose scraped knees I kissed. That Emily. She was hiding something so dark it would bring the police? No, that couldn't be." But Sophie's hand shook as it clutched mine, and I knew she believed every word she was saying. The priest cleared his throat at the altar. The groom, Mark Daniels, stood tall, smiling like he had already won. He was a polished man, too polished. A corporate type, always in expensive suits, the kind of man who shook my hand without really looking me in the eye. Something about him had always made me uneasy, though I had never found the words to explain it. Now, as Sophie's warning echoed in my head, his smile seemed sharper, colder. The organist shifted tunes, moving into the wedding march. Guests stood as Emily walked slowly down the aisle, holding her bouquet like a prize. Everyone clapped quietly, some wiping tears. I should have been among them, a proud father beaming at his daughter's happiness. Instead, I stood frozen, Sophie's words drilling into me. "Stop this wedding. The police will come." Emily reached the altar, her face glowing. Mark took her hand. The priest lifted his voice, welcoming everyone, blessing the union. My son, Michael, sat across the aisle with his wife. He looked relaxed, unaware of the storm gathering. Michael and I hadn't spoken much these past years. He always thought I was too hard, too old-fashioned, too stubborn. But he loved his sister, and right then, I envied his ignorance. I leaned down again, whispering urgently to Sophie. "Sweetheart, what are you talking about? What do you mean the police will come?" She shook her head, tears rolling down her cheeks. "I promised I wouldn't say. Mom said she'd hurt me if I told anyone. But Grandpa, please. Please don't let her marry him." My heart sank into my stomach. Hurt her? My Emily? Threaten her own child? My throat tightened as though invisible hands were choking me. This couldn't be real. This couldn't be happening. But then, in the stillness of that church, I heard Sophie's sobs muffled against my sleeve. That sound was real. The ceremony moved forward. Words about love, commitment, and family filled the air. My daughter's lips parted into a smile so wide it seemed forced, painted on like a mask. I scanned the room, my mind spinning, wondering what I should do. If I shouted, if I stood up and stopped everything, people would think I'd gone crazy. A bitter old man losing his mind. And yet, Sophie's warning beat in my head like a drum. The priest's voice grew louder. "If anyone here objects to this union, speak now or forever hold your peace." That was my chance. I opened my mouth. My body tensed to rise. And then, the doors of the church burst open. A loud slam echoed, bouncing off the stained glass windows. Guests turned, gasps rising like waves. 2 police officers stepped inside, their badges gleaming, their faces hard and serious. Heavy boots clicked against the marble floor as they walked down the aisle. Emily's smile faltered. Mark's grip on her hand stiffened. The lead officer stopped near the front pews, his voice firm, cutting through the whispers. "Emily Caldwell." Silence stretched like a noose around the room. "Yes." My daughter's voice shook as she answered. "You need to come with us." "No." Gasps filled the church. Someone dropped their phone. Another person covered their mouth with both hands. The priest froze mid-sentence, his Bible trembling in his grip. I felt Sophie squeeze my hand tighter, almost cutting off my circulation. She looked up at me, her young eyes full of fear but also something else, relief. She had known this moment was coming. Emily's bouquet slipped from her hands, flowers scattering across the floor. Her face drained of color. She glanced at me, then at Sophie, her lips moving but no words coming out. And in that instant, as the police officers moved closer, my world tilted. Everything I thought I knew about my daughter cracked like glass under pressure. What had she done? What secret was she hiding? And why did her little girl, my granddaughter, know the truth before any of us? As they reached for Emily, guests erupted into frantic whispers, phones lifted high to record, the once celebratory church now drowning in chaos. And me? I stood there, my chest tight, caught between 2 impossible choices: protect my daughter, or trust the trembling child who had just saved me from a nightmare I hadn't even seen coming. The bells outside kept ringing, almost mocking me, as though the whole world already knew the truth I was about to learn. The church dissolved into noise. Guests rose from their seats, whispers darting like shadows through the pews. Some people gasped, others clutched their chests as if they'd witnessed a crime. The 2 officers stood firm, waiting for Emily to move. My daughter, my beautiful bride in white, looked like a ghost. The bouquet lay scattered at her feet, petals crushed beneath her trembling shoes. I wanted to stand up, to shout at the officers, to demand they explain themselves. But I didn't. Because I couldn't. Sophie's words still echoed in my head like a curse. Asterisk, if you don't stop this, the police will. Asterisk. I turned toward her, clutching her little hand, my mind spiraling. How had she known? Why had she warned me? And what in God's name had Emily done? As the officers led my daughter toward the doors, I felt a sharp pain in my chest. Not a heart attack, but something worse. A father's heartbreak. And while the church murmured and phones recorded, my thoughts began drifting, pulling me backward through the years. When Emily was born, I thought I had been given a miracle. My wife, Margaret, had been through a hard labor. I still remember her sweat-soaked hair sticking to her face, her pale lips whispering, "Henry, she's ours." The doctor placed a tiny bundle in her arms, and when I first held Emily, my heart nearly burst. I already had Michael, our boy, a rambunctious 6-year-old who filled the house with noise and laughter. But Emily, she was quiet, wide-eyed, fragile in a way that made me vow, right then, I would spend every breath protecting her. 4 years, that's what I did. I worked 2 jobs, days in construction, nights fixing furniture in the garage. Margaret took care of the kids, but when cancer came, it stole her from me too quickly. Emily was just 13 when her mother passed. I'll never forget her cry at the funeral, high-pitched and broken, as she clung to me. Michael tried to act strong, holding my hand, but he was just a boy. I promised them both, standing at that graveside, that I'd never let them down. But promises are heavy things. And sometimes they break without warning. Emily grew into a teenager who was sharper than most. Too sharp, maybe. She had Margaret's beauty but not her gentleness. She was clever, manipulative even, always knowing what to say to get her way. I saw the signs early. There was the time she lied about her grades, forging a teacher's signature on a report card. Or when she told me she was staying late at school for practice but was really with older kids at the mall. Small things at first, but enough to make me uneasy. Michael would tell me, "Dad, she's lying. Can't you see it?" And I'd snap back at him, "Don't you dare talk about your sister that way." Why? Because I couldn't face the truth. After losing Margaret, I clung to Emily like a lifeline. She was my daughter, my little girl. And even when the cracks showed, I patched over them with blind love. Maybe that was my first mistake. I remember one night in particular, years ago. Emily was 16. She came home past midnight, her makeup smeared, her smile too wide. I was waiting on the porch, my arms crossed. "Where were you?" I demanded. "With friends," she said quickly. "What friends?" She hesitated, then smirked. "You wouldn't know them. Don't worry, Dad. I can take care of myself." That smirk, it still haunts me. It wasn't the face of a child. It was the face of someone who knew they held power over me. Michael stepped out behind me, anger flashing in his eyes. "She was with those guys again, Dad. I told you." "Shut up, Michael," Emily snapped, her voice like ice. "You're just jealous." They argued, and I froze. Instead of demanding answers, instead of protecting them both, I stepped aside. I told myself she'd grow out of it. That she was just a rebellious teenager. But rebellion has roots. And if you don't cut them early, they grow into something darker. Back in the church, I watched Emily's veil slip off as the officers guided her down the aisle. The guests' stares felt like knives. And suddenly I realized something. This moment wasn't sudden at all. It was the harvest of seeds planted long ago. Maybe I'd ignored the warning signs. Maybe Sophie's trembling voice was just the echo of truths I had refused to see when Emily was young. I closed my eyes, and another memory surfaced, one I had buried deep. Emily was 21 then, fresh out of college. She came home one summer with a boyfriend named Alan. He was slick, smooth-talking, the kind of man who charmed everyone in the room. But there was something about him I didn't trust. He avoided eye contact, his smile never reaching his eyes. One night, Michael confronted her in the kitchen while I was in the garage. "Emily, he's no good for you," he said. She shot back, "You don't know anything, Michael. He loves me." "Love?" Michael scoffed. "He's using you. Can't you see it?" I walked in just as Emily slapped him across the face. "Enough!" I shouted, pulling them apart. Michael's cheek burned red. Emily stormed upstairs, slamming the door. I should have stopped her. I should have pulled her aside, demanded she cut ties with Alan. But instead, I tried to keep the peace. I always tried to keep the peace. And in doing so, I let her slip further away. A few months later, Alan was arrested for fraud. Emily barely spoke of it again. She moved on, as if it had never happened. But I saw the pattern beginning, the lies, the charm, the dangerous choices. And now, standing in this church decades later, watching officers escort her away in handcuffs, I realized she hadn't moved on. She had just gotten better at hiding. Sophie tugged my arm again, her voice breaking through my spiral. "Grandpa, please don't be mad at me." I didn't want to tell, but I couldn't let this happen. I knelt down, looking into her teary eyes. "Sweetheart, I'm not mad. But you have to tell me, what did she do? What do you know?" Before she could answer, Michael approached, his face pale. "Dad, what's happening? Why are they taking her?" I opened my mouth, but no words came out. Because I didn't know. Not yet. The guests whispered louder. The groom stood frozen at the altar, fury burning in his face. Mark Daniels looked less like a groom now and more like a man whose plans had just been ruined. His jaw clenched, his hands balled into fists at his side. For a brief second, I thought I saw fear in his eyes. Fear, not for Emily, but for himself. The officers pushed open the doors, sunlight spilling into the church. Emily stumbled forward, her eyes darting to Sophie, then to me. She mouthed something I couldn't quite catch. And then she was gone, swallowed by the light outside. I stood in the wreckage of what was supposed to be her happiest day, my heart heavy with memories of the little girl I once carried on my shoulders, the teenager who lied with a smile, the woman who now faced the law. But somewhere inside me, a fire began to stir. I had spent my whole life protecting her, excusing her, covering her mistakes. But this was different. This wasn't just about her. It was about Sophie. About the truth. About the family I had nearly lost to blind love. And as the church doors closed, and chaos erupted around me, one thought burned clear in my mind. I had to find out what my daughter had done. The church felt like a battlefield after the soldiers had left. Guests scattered in small, whispering groups, clutching purses and jackets, rushing for the exits as if they didn't want to be associated with the wreckage. The smell of roses still lingered, sweet but sickening, mixed with the stale perfume of fear. I stood in the middle aisle, frozen, my hands still shaking. My daughter's wedding dress dragged across the floor in my mind like a ghost, the petals from her fallen bouquet crushed under careless feet. The police had taken her. And all I had left was Sophie, clinging to me like a lifeline. Michael stormed up, his face red with panic and confusion. "Dad, what the hell just happened?" His wife, Linda, hovered behind him, pale and tight-lipped, as if she wanted to vanish into the shadows. I swallowed hard, glancing at Sophie, then back at my son. They arrested her." "I saw that," Michael snapped. "But why? What for?" I didn't answer right away. Sophie tugged on my sleeve, whispering, "Don't tell him yet, Grandpa. Please." Her little eyes begged me, pleading for silence. Michael caught the hesitation and narrowed his gaze. "You know something, don't you?" I shook my head. "Not enough. Not yet." He stepped closer, his voice rising. "Don't play games with me, Dad. That was my sister. My only sister. You think you can just stand there while they drag her away?" His words sliced deep. Because he was right, I had stood there. Just like I'd stood there years ago when Emily lied, when she lashed out, when she walked down darker and darker roads. Always standing. Never acting. "Michael," I said firmly, my voice breaking, "we'll get answers. But not here. Not in front of everyone." Guests kept staring, phones still flashing, recording. This wasn't a wedding anymore. It was a spectacle. I felt the weight of their judgment pressing on me, making it hard to breathe. I grabbed Sophie's hand, pulling her closer. "Let's go home. We'll talk there." Michael wanted to argue, but one look at Sophie's trembling face softened him. He nodded stiffly. Together we left the church, leaving behind a groom who looked like he wanted to tear the world apart and whispers that would spread through town before the sun set. Back at my house, the silence was heavy. My little place wasn't grand, just a two-bedroom home on the edge of town, filled with the smell of wood polish and the creak of old floors. I'd lived here alone since Margaret passed, except for the times when Emily came with Sophie. Now Sophie sat on the couch, clutching a stuffed rabbit I'd given her years ago, rocking back and forth. Michael paced the living room like a caged animal, his tie undone, his hair wild from running his hands through it. Finally, he stopped. "All right. Somebody tell me what the hell is going on. Why would the police arrest Emily on her wedding day?" "Dad, start talking." I looked at Sophie. She buried her face in the rabbit's fur. "Grandpa, don't make me." "Sweetheart," I said gently, kneeling beside her, "you already told me something today. You knew this was going to happen." "How?" Michael froze. "What did she tell you?" I hesitated. Sophie's fear was real. I could see it in the way her hands shook, the way her lips quivered. She had been carrying something too heavy for her small shoulders. And now, Michael's eyes bore into me, demanding the truth. "She said, Emily isn't who we think she is," I admitted slowly. "She said if the wedding went through, the police would come." Michael blinked, stunned. "That's ridiculous. She's 10, Dad. She doesn't know what she's talking about." "I do," Sophie suddenly shouted, her small voice breaking the room in half. Tears spilled down her cheeks as she clutched the rabbit tighter. "I know because I heard her. Mom said she'd go to jail if anyone found out. She made me promise not to tell. But I couldn't let her marry him, Grandpa. I couldn't." The room fell silent. Even Michael stopped breathing for a second. My heart pounded. "Sophie, what did you hear?" She shook her head violently, burying her face again. "I can't. She'll hurt me." Michael's face twisted, his voice trembling with anger. "Hurt you? Emily would never." But I saw it. The doubt in his eyes. Because he remembered the Emily I did, the one who lied, who manipulated, who could smile at you with sunshine while hiding a knife behind her back. I stood, my knees cracking. "Michael, we have to face the truth. Emily's been on a dark path for years. Maybe we didn't want to see it, but Sophie has. And now the law has too." "No," he snapped, shaking his head. "No, you're wrong. She's my sister. She's all I've got." He stormed toward the door, grabbing his coat. "I'm going to the station. I'll get answers myself." I let him go. Because maybe he needed to hear it from them, not me. The door slammed, leaving me alone with Sophie. I sat beside her, wrapping an arm around her trembling shoulders. "Sweetheart, listen to me. You're safe here. Nothing bad will happen to you. But I need to understand. What did your mom do?" She sniffled, clutching the rabbit. "It's about money. Lots of money. She told Mark she had it, but she doesn't. She lied. She promised him she'd take care of everything after they married. But she doesn't have it, Grandpa. She took it from someone else." My chest tightened. "She stole." Sophie nodded, tears dripping onto her dress. "She said if anyone found out, she'd lose me forever. She said Grandpa and Uncle Michael wouldn't forgive her. She said she'd rather die than go to jail." I closed my eyes, the weight of it crushing me. Fraud. Theft. Lies. It was Alan all over again, but worse. This wasn't teenage rebellion. This was survival built on crime. And Emily had dragged her own daughter into the shadows with her. "Sweetheart," I whispered, brushing her hair back, "thank you for telling me. You did the right thing." But inside, my heart shattered. It was late evening when Michael returned. His face was pale, his eyes hollow. He dropped his coat on the chair and sank onto the couch across from me. "They won't tell me much," he said hoarsely. "Just that it's financial crimes. Fraud. Embezzlement. They've been investigating her for months. Months, Dad." I didn't see it," Sophie whimpered, curling into me tighter. Michael rubbed his face with both hands. "They said she could face years. Maybe decades. They're not sure yet." His voice cracked. "My sister. My only sister." I felt his grief, but also his rage. Not just at Emily, but at me. Because I had raised her. I had protected her. I had turned away from the truth for years. "She made her bed," I said quietly. "Now she has to lie in it." Michael's eyes burned into me. "You sound like you don't even care." "I care," I snapped, my voice shaking. "But I care about Sophie more. Look at her. Look what Emily's lies have done to her already." Sophie curled deeper into my side, silent tears dripping down her cheeks. Michael looked at her, then away. His fists clenched. He stood abruptly, pacing. "I'm not letting her rot in jail. I don't care what she did. I'll find a way to fix this." "How?" I asked bitterly. "By lying for her. By covering for her again. That's what we've done her whole life. And look where it got us." He froze, glaring at me, his jaw tight. "You always blame her. But maybe this is your fault. You were her father. You were supposed to raise her right." The words hit like a hammer. Because part of me knew he was right. Before I could answer, Sophie's small voice cut through the tension. "Grandpa, Uncle Michael, Mom didn't just lie to Mark." We both turned to her. She clutched her rabbit, trembling, her eyes wide with fear. "She lied to someone else too. Someone really bad. And he said, if she didn't give him the money back soon, he'd hurt me." The room went silent. My blood ran cold. "What do you mean?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Sophie's lips trembled. "Mom said, he knows where we live." The clock on my living room wall ticked louder than I'd ever heard it, each second slamming like a nail into wood. Sophie's small voice still echoed in the silence she had dropped on us. Asterisk, "He knows where we live." Asterisk. Michael and I stared at her, both of us frozen, both of us realizing at the same moment that this wasn't just about Emily anymore. "Sweetheart," I said carefully, forcing my voice to stay steady, "what do you mean he knows where you live? Who told you that?" She curled tighter into my side, squeezing the rabbit I'd given her years ago. "Mom told me. She said if I ever saw a black car parked outside the house, I should stay away from the windows. She said I should hide and not tell anyone." My stomach twisted. This wasn't just financial fraud. This was debt. Dangerous debt. Michael raked his hands through his hair, pacing the floor, muttering under his breath. "Damn it, Emily, damn it." I tried to keep my voice calm for Sophie's sake, though inside I felt like screaming. "Did your mom ever say his name, Sophie? The man she owes money to?" She hesitated, then whispered, "Mr. Cole." The name hung in the air like smoke. I didn't recognize it, but Michael froze, his face going pale. "You know him?" I asked sharply. Michael nodded slowly. "Coleman, Cole, Haggerty. He runs a lot of dirty businesses around Detroit. Gambling, loans, real estate scams. He's been in and out of court but never convicted. People say if you cross him, you disappear." Sophie whimpered, pressing her face into my chest. My jaw tightened. My daughter, my Emily, had gotten herself tangled in the web of a man like that. And in doing so, she had dragged her own child into danger. "Michael," I said quietly, "we need to protect Sophie. Right now." He looked at me, eyes wild. "How?" "If Cole's got his eyes on her, we can't just sit here. He could send someone tonight." I pulled Sophie closer, feeling the fragile rise and fall of her small chest against mine. "Then we won't sit here. We'll prepare." That night, after Sophie fell asleep on the couch, clutching her rabbit like a lifeline, Michael and I sat at the kitchen table. The single bulb above us cast long shadows, making his face look older, harsher. "I can't believe she'd get involved with him," Michael muttered, staring at the wood grain in the table. "After Alan. After everything. She swore she'd never let another man drag her down again." "She didn't learn," I said bitterly. "Or maybe she did, and used it to her advantage. If she promised him money, maybe she thought she could play him. But men like that, you don't play with them." Michael's eyes flicked up. What do we do, Dad? The cops have her. They won't protect Sophie from Cole, they'll just say it's unrelated. I sighed, rubbing my temples. We'll keep her here. She stays with me now. At least until we know more. Michael frowned. You really think you can keep her safe? You're 70 years old, Dad. This isn't like fixing a broken fence. His words cut deep, but I didn't flinch. I raised you. I raised Emily. I've carried this family on my back my whole life. And if it comes down to it, I'll die protecting that little girl. Don't you doubt me. For a moment, he softened. His lips trembled like he wanted to apologize, but the words didn't come. Instead, he pulled out his phone. I know a guy who used to work with Cole. A mechanic. He got out, but he still hears things. Maybe he can tell us how deep Emily's in. I nodded. Call him tomorrow. For now, lock the doors. Check the windows. As Michael moved around the house, I sat alone for a moment, staring at Sophie's sleeping face from the kitchen. She looked so much like Emily did at that age. Innocent, fragile, completely unaware of the dangers around her. And I swore, right then, I wouldn't repeat the mistakes I made with Emily. I wouldn't ignore the warning signs. I wouldn't turn away. Sophie deserved better. The next morning, sunlight barely broke through the blinds when I was jolted awake by the sound of an engine idling outside. I sat up in my recliner, heart pounding. Michael was already at the window, peering through the curtain. A black sedan sat across the street. Windows tinted. Engine rumbling. My gut twisted. Sophie padded into the room, rubbing her eyes, clutching her rabbit. When she saw the car, her face drained of color. "That's it," she whispered. "That's the car Mom told me about." I pulled her close, my hand on her small shoulder. "Don't worry, sweetheart. You're safe here." But my eyes stayed glued to the sedan. The car didn't move for nearly 20 minutes. Then, slowly, it rolled away. Michael cursed under his breath. "They're watching." "Then let them watch," I growled. "If they come close, they'll regret it." But inside, my fear grew. Because I knew men like that didn't just watch. They waited. And when the time was right, they struck. Later that day, Michael made the call to his contact. I overheard bits of the conversation from the porch, his voice low and urgent. When he hung up, his face was grim. "He says Emily owes Cole nearly 200 grand, Michael said flatly. My head snapped toward him. 200? Michael nodded. She borrowed it over time. Gambling debts, investments gone bad. She promised she'd pay it back once she married Mark. He's rich, Dad. That's why she wanted this wedding so badly. Once she had his accounts, she could pay Cole off." I sank into the porch chair, the wood creaking beneath me. So the marriage wasn't love. It was a deal. A lifeline. Michael's fists clenched. And now that it's ruined, Cole's not going to wait around. He's going to come after her, or worse, Sophie. Sophie, who was sitting on the porch steps, looked up at us with wide eyes. "Is Mom in danger too?" I hesitated. Then I nodded. "Yes, sweetheart. But right now, she's with the police. They'll keep her safe. You're the one we need to protect." She clutched her rabbit tighter, her lip trembling. "I don't want to lose her, Grandpa." My chest ached. I know. But sometimes, when people make bad choices, we can't save them. We can only save ourselves. And that's what we're going to do. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every creak of the house, every shadow outside the window, felt like danger creeping closer. I sat in the dark living room, shotgun across my knees, staring at the door. My body may have been old, but my instincts were sharp. Around midnight, headlights flashed outside. I tensed, gripping the shotgun tighter. But it was only Michael, pulling into the driveway. He stepped inside, his face pale. "Dad, we've got a problem." "What now?" I asked, my voice low. "They let Emily out." "What?" My blood ran cold. "Already." He nodded. "Bail. Somebody paid it fast. My guy thinks it was Cole. He wants her free so she can make things right with him." I cursed under my breath. Emily wasn't safe. She was bait. Michael looked at me, fear in his eyes. "Dad, if Cole's got her now, it's only a matter of time before he comes knocking here. Sophie's the leverage. We've got to move her. Tonight." I glanced at the couch, where Sophie slept peacefully under a blanket, clutching her rabbit. Move her. Protect her. Outrun the shadows of her own mother's choices. I felt the weight of 68 years in my bones. But I also felt the fire of a father who had failed once before, and wouldn't fail again. I stood, loading the shotgun. Pack her things. We're leaving before the sun rises. The night air bit at my skin as we loaded Sophie's small suitcase into the back of Michael's pickup. The farmhouse porch light cast a weak yellow glow, but beyond that, everything was swallowed in darkness. The fields stretched out endlessly, quiet, like they were holding their breath. Sophie clung to my hand, her rabbit tucked under her arm. Her eyes searched my face, as if I could promise her safety with just a look. "Grandpa, where are we going?" she whispered. "Someplace safe," I said softly, squeezing her hand. "Away from the bad men. You just trust me." Michael slammed the tailgate shut and turned to me. "I called a buddy of mine from high school. He owns a cabin up north, way off the grid. No cell service, no neighbors for miles. He said we can stay as long as we need." I nodded. It was the best option we had. If Cole's men were circling the house already, staying here meant waiting for them to come through the front door. "Let's move," I said. We bundled Sophie into the truck, and I climbed in beside her. Michael started the engine, headlights cutting through the night. As the farmhouse shrank behind us, I felt a pang in my chest. That house had been my life's work, every nail and beam laid with my own hands. Leaving it behind was like abandoning a part of myself. But protecting Sophie mattered more than walls and wood. The road stretched on, long and dark. Sophie leaned against me, drifting to sleep, while Michael gripped the wheel with both hands, jaw tight. "You think Cole's already got her?" he asked finally, breaking the silence. "Emily." I stared out at the empty fields rolling past. "If he paid her bail, then yes. She's with him, whether she wants to be or not." Michael slammed his hand against the wheel. "She just keeps digging herself deeper. God, Dad, what are we supposed to do? The cops think she's guilty, Cole wants her money, and we're in the middle of it." I kept my voice low so Sophie wouldn't wake. "We keep her safe. That's it. Everything else we figure out later." Michael shook his head, his eyes red with exhaustion. "It's not that simple. Cole doesn't forget. He doesn't forgive. As long as Emily's alive, Sophie's leverage. And as long as Sophie's leverage, we're targets." His words sank into me like ice. I'd been trying not to think it, but he was right. Hours later, dawn broke over the horizon as we turned down a dirt road lined with pine trees. The cabin came into view, a small, weathered structure tucked deep in the woods. It wasn't much, just logs, a tin roof, and a porch, but it was far enough from the world that I let out the first real breath of relief since Sophie whispered those words at the wedding. Michael killed the engine. The silence of the forest surrounded us. Sophie stirred awake, blinking at the cabin. "Is this where we're staying?" "For now," I said gently. "Think of it like a camping trip. Just us, away from everything." She managed a small smile, but I could see the fear still lingering in her eyes. We carried our things inside. The cabin smelled of pine and dust, the furniture old but sturdy. There was a wood stove, a single bedroom, and a loft above with 2 narrow beds. Michael tested the locks on the doors and windows while I started a fire to drive out the chill. For a brief moment, it felt almost normal. Sophie sat cross-legged on the rug, playing with her rabbit, while the fire crackled softly. But normal didn't last. It couldn't. Not with men like Cole hunting us. That evening, after Sophie fell asleep in the loft, Michael and I sat on the porch steps, watching the last light fade behind the trees. The quiet was heavy, pressing on my chest. "I can't stop thinking about her," Michael said suddenly. "Emily." He nodded. "She's my sister, Dad. I hate her for what she's done, but she's still my sister. What if Cole hurts her? What if she's already—" His voice broke off. I put a hand on his shoulder. "I know. But we can't save her if we lose Sophie. One battle at a time." Michael rubbed his face with both hands. "And what happens if the cops track us here? Dad, we're harboring a child from a legal investigation. If they find us, we'll lose Sophie anyway." I clenched my jaw. "Then we stay quiet. No phones. No neighbors. Nobody knows we're here. We disappear until this blows over." He looked at me, his eyes hollow. "And if it never does?" I didn't answer. 3 nights later, I woke to the sound of gravel crunching outside. My heart lurched. I grabbed the shotgun from beside my bed and moved to the window, peering into the darkness. Headlights. A car was crawling down the dirt road, its beams cutting through the trees. "Michael!" I hissed. He scrambled awake, rushing to the window. His face went pale. "It's them," he whispered. Sophie stirred in the loft above, her small voice carrying down. "Grandpa!" Stay quiet. I called up. The car rolled closer, then stopped just beyond the cabin. The engine idled. I could make out two figures inside, but the tinted windows made it hard to see their faces. Michael loaded his pistol, hands shaking. What do we do? I tightened my grip on the shotgun. We don't open the door. Not unless they try to come in. For what felt like an eternity, the car just sat there, engine rumbling. Then the passenger door opened. A tall man stepped out, his silhouette outlined in the headlights. He moved slow, deliberate, like a predator that already knew its prey had nowhere to run. He stopped at the edge of the porch, his face hidden in shadow. "Henry Walker," he called. His voice was calm, almost polite. My stomach dropped. He knew my name. "Who's asking?" I shouted back, leveling the shotgun at the door. The man chuckled. "Name's Cole Haggerty. I think you know why I'm here." Michael's breath caught. Cole tilted his head, his voice smooth as silk. "You've got something of mine. A little girl. Sweet kid, looks just like her mama. Why don't you send her out, and nobody gets hurt?" Rage boiled up inside me. I took a step toward the door. "You're not taking her. Not now, not ever." Cole laughed, slow and menacing. "I like your spirit, old man. But you're playing a dangerous game. You keep her, and you'll wish the police had taken her instead of me." He took one step closer to the porch. I raised the shotgun, aiming straight at his chest. "One more step," I growled, "and you won't take another." Cole froze. For a moment, the only sound was the crackle of the fire inside and the low hum of his car engine. Then, slowly, he smiled. "All right, Henry. You win tonight." He backed away, his boots crunching on the gravel. "But you can't hide forever. And when I come back, it won't just be me." He slid back into the car, and the headlights swung around as the sedan pulled away, disappearing into the trees. Michael collapsed against the wall, breathing hard. "Jesus, Dad, what the hell do we do now?" I lowered the shotgun, my hands trembling. My chest heaved, not from fear, but from the fire raging inside me. "What do we do now?" "We fight." I looked up toward the loft, where Sophie was peeking down with wide, terrified eyes. "We don't run anymore," I said firmly. "If Cole wants a war, he's got one. But he won't take her. Not while I'm alive." The morning after Cole's visit, the woods felt different. Quieter. Even the birds seemed cautious, their songs broken, wary. I sat on the porch with the shotgun across my lap, watching the dirt road for any sign of dust rising. I hadn't slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw his smirk in the headlights. I heard his voice. Asterisk, you can't hide forever. Asterisk. He was right. Michael stepped out, rubbing his face, eyes bloodshot. "Dad, you need rest." I shook my head. "I'll rest when Sophie's safe." "She's just a kid," he muttered. "She doesn't deserve this." I turned to him sharply. "Neither did Emily once. But choices lead to roads, and roads lead to places you can't come back from. Now we've got to make sure Sophie doesn't follow her mother's path." Michael opened his mouth to argue, but he stopped. Instead, he sat beside me, shoulders sagging. "So what's the plan?" "We just wait until Cole brings a dozen men and burns us out." I looked at him, my voice steady. "No. We hit first." He stared at me like I'd lost my mind. "Dad, you're 68 years old. You're talking about going after Cole Haggerty? The guy's got more money, more men, more everything. He'll crush you." "Maybe," I said, eyes fixed on the road. "But I've lived long enough to know one truth. Bullies don't stop until someone stands in their way. And if not me, who?" Michael leaned back, running a hand through his hair. "You've changed, Dad. I don't know if it's fear, or anger, or both, but you're not the same man who raised us." I met his eyes. Maybe I should have been this man back then. Maybe if I had fought harder for Emily, she wouldn't have ended up in Cole's world. Michael fell silent. That afternoon, Sophie sat at the kitchen table drawing with colored pencils I found in a drawer. She hummed softly, her rabbit beside her, trying to build a world of color against the gray fear that surrounded us. I knelt beside her. "What ya drawing, sweetheart?" She smiled faintly. "A house. With a big fence. Nobody can come in unless we let them." My throat tightened. "That's a good house. Will we ever have one like that?" she asked, looking up at me. I swallowed. "One day. I promise." Her small hand slipped into mine. "Don't let him take me, Grandpa." The promise I gave her wasn't just words. It was a vow. Later, Michael drove into town under the cover of evening. We needed supplies, canned food, batteries, more ammo. While he was gone, I kept watch. Sophie played quietly inside, and I listened to every creak of the woods. The knock came just after sundown. 3 sharp raps on the door. I froze. My finger slid along the shotgun's trigger. "Who's there?" Silence. Then a voice I hadn't expected in 1,000 years. "Dad." "It's me. Emily." My chest squeezed tight. I opened the door slowly, gun still raised. She stood there, thinner than I remembered, her face pale, eyes sunken with exhaustion. A bruise darkened her cheek, and her clothes hung loosely, like she'd been pulled through hell. "Emily," I whispered. "Please," she begged, her voice cracking. "I need to come in. He's watching me." Against every instinct screaming inside me, I pulled her inside. Sophie rushed forward, her eyes wide. "Mommy!" Emily fell to her knees, wrapping her arms around her daughter. She wept into Sophie's hair, rocking her like she was afraid to let go. I stood frozen, torn between relief and fury. When Sophie finally drifted into the loft, Emily sat at the table, her hands trembling as she held a glass of water. "He paid my bail," she said, her voice hollow. "I didn't ask him to, but he said I owed him. He said the only way out was to give him you." "Me?" I demanded. Her eyes met mine, glassy with tears. "Not just you, Dad. Sophie. He knows you'll fight for her. He knows you won't hand her over. That's why he came here, to break you." Rage flared inside me. "So what then? You just let him use you as bait to lead him to us?" Emily flinched. "I didn't have a choice. He has people everywhere. He said if I didn't convince you to give Sophie up, he'd—" her voice broke. "He'd kill you both." I slammed my fist against the table. "You brought him here, Emily. To your own daughter. Do you even hear yourself?" Tears spilled down her cheeks. "I didn't want this, Dad. I swear. I just wanted a way out. Mark was supposed to save me. When that fell apart, Cole made sure I had nowhere else to turn." My chest ached. I wanted to believe her. I wanted to hold her like I used to when she scraped her knee as a girl. But all I could see was the black sedan in the woods and the smile on Cole's face. "You gave him our names, didn't you?" I asked. Emily shook her head desperately. "No. He already knew. He's been watching you since the wedding. He said he respects you, Dad, that you've got backbone. That's why he wants to break you in front of Sophie." I felt sick. This wasn't just about money anymore. This was personal. Michael stormed in moments later, groceries in hand. When he saw Emily, his face hardened. "What the hell is she doing here?" "She showed up," I said quietly. "Cole sent her." Emily stood, her voice trembling. "Michael, please. I didn't mean—" But he cut her off, his voice like steel. "You've done enough. You dragged this family into hell, and now you expect us to just forgive you." She sobbed. "I'm sorry. I know I messed up, but he won't let me go. He won't let any of us go." Michael turned to me. "Dad, she's poison. If she stays, Cole will follow. If she leaves, maybe we have a chance." My heart tore in two. She was my daughter, my flesh and blood. But Michael was right. Her presence painted a target on Sophie's back. Emily saw the conflict on my face. She reached across the table, her hand trembling. "Dad, please. Don't send me away. Not again." Her words cut deep. Because she was right, I had sent her away once before, when she was pregnant with Sophie and refused to listen to reason. I thought tough love would straighten her out. Instead, it had pushed her closer to men like Cole. Now, here we were, with a child caught in the wreckage. I lowered my gaze, my voice gravelly. "You can stay. But you follow my rules. You don't speak to Cole. You don't leave this cabin without me. And if you betray us again—" I swallowed hard, my jaw tight. "I'll protect Sophie, even if it means protecting her from you." Emily nodded through tears. "I understand." But in her eyes, I saw something I couldn't quite name. Fear, guilt, or a secret she hadn't shared yet. That night, after everyone went to bed, I sat awake by the fire, Emily's words replaying in my head. Cole didn't just want money. He wanted power. He wanted Sophie. And he wanted me broken. But he didn't know me. Not really. I'd been broken before. By loss. By betrayal. By the weight of years carrying this family on my shoulders. And every time, I'd found a way back up. This time would be no different. I stared into the flames, my fists tightening around the shotgun. If Cole wanted a war, then I'd give him one. Not with rage. Not with recklessness. But with the quiet, patient strength of a man who had lived long enough to know how battles are truly won. And when the time came, he'd see what it meant to face a father's love. The cabin had grown too quiet. Days passed with no cars on the dirt road, no men lurking in the trees, no calls from the outside world. It should have felt safe, but the silence was worse than footsteps on the porch. It meant Cole was waiting, watching, planning his strike. I'd lived long enough to know that silence before a storm was never a gift. It was a warning. I spent those days preparing. Michael didn't like it, but he didn't stop me either. Together, we reinforced the cabin. New locks on the doors, planks over the weakest windows, cans of food lined against the wall. I showed him how to make traps in the woods, crude but effective, wire, nails, even shards of glass buried where a man's boot might fall. Emily watched from the corner, silent most of the time. She looked like a shadow of herself, her eyes sunken, her lips pale. Some days she tried to help, other days she sat staring at nothing, as if Cole's hand was still gripping the back of her neck. Sophie was the only bright light in that cabin. She drew pictures on scrap paper, filling the walls with crayon houses, smiling suns, stick figures of us holding hands. Every picture had the same rabbit in it, a little gray bundle with long ears. Her constant reminder that innocence still had a place, even here. But even Sophie could feel the heaviness in the air. One night, she tugged on my sleeve as I checked the locks. "Grandpa," she whispered, "why do you stay up so late every night?" "To watch over you," I said, brushing a strand of hair from her forehead. "From the bad man?" "Yes." She thought for a moment. "Does Mommy need watching too?" Her question pierced deeper than any knife. "Yes," I admitted quietly. "Maybe more than anyone." The turning point came 3 nights later. I had gone outside to check the traps when I noticed the cabin's back window slightly open. I crept closer, my heart pounding, and heard Emily's voice, low and trembling. "Yes." "I'm still here." "No, he doesn't trust me." "I'm trying." She was on the phone. Rage burned through me. I stormed inside, yanking the phone from her hand. On the other end, the line went dead. Emily's face went white. "Dad, it's not what you think." "You're talking to him," I growled, my hand shaking as I pointed at the phone. "You brought him closer." Tears filled her eyes. "I had to. He said he'd kill me if I didn't keep him updated. You don't know what he's capable of." Michael came running from the loft, his pistol drawn. "What's going on?" "She's feeding him information," I spat. Michael's face hardened. "I told you we couldn't trust her." Emily fell to her knees, clutching my arm. "Please, Dad, listen to me. I wasn't giving him everything. I was stalling. Trying to buy us time." "Time for what?" I demanded. She hesitated, her lips trembling. "For you to find a way out." Her words rang hollow, but something in her eyes, a glimmer of desperation, of hope, made me pause. Michael wasn't convinced. "She's a liability. If Cole comes, it's because she told him how to find us." Emily sobbed. "I swear I didn't tell him where we are. He already knows. He always knows." The silence that followed was heavier than the walls around us. I didn't know if she was lying or broken, maybe both. But I knew one thing, we couldn't turn against each other now. "We keep her here," I said finally. Michael slammed his fist against the table. "Dad." "No arguments," I snapped. "If she's lying, I'll deal with it. If she's telling the truth, then she's as much a victim as the rest of us." Michael's jaw clenched, but he said nothing more. The next morning, Sophie came to me holding something in her small hands. "Grandpa," she whispered, "I found this under Mommy's bed." It was a small black notebook, worn at the edges, its pages filled with messy handwriting. I opened it, my stomach twisting as I read the numbers inside. Names, dates, dollar amounts, lists of debts, transactions. Cole's empire written in my daughter's hand. Emily appeared in the doorway, her face pale as she saw what I was holding. "That's his ledger," she said softly. "I started keeping track of everything he made me sign. Every loan, every fake contract. He doesn't know I copied it." Michael grabbed the notebook, flipping through it. This could put him away." Emily nodded. "If the police get this, they'll finally have proof. But if Cole finds out I kept it," her voice cracked, "he'll kill me. He'll kill all of us." For the first time, I saw something in her eyes that wasn't fear, it was defiance. She had been drowning for years, but here, in this cabin, she was holding the rope that could drag Cole under. And Sophie had found it. That night, while Sophie slept curled in her loft bed, the three of us sat at the table with a notebook between us. The firelight flickered over our faces, casting long shadows. Michael tapped the pages. If we get this to the police, Cole's done. But we can't just walk into a station. He's got people everywhere. Emily's hands trembled. There's one detective I trust. She arrested me at the wedding. Her name's Detective Ramos. She looked at me like she wanted to help, not just lock me up. If anyone would listen, it's her. Michael frowned. How do we even reach her? No phones. No emails. If we move, Cole will know. I leaned forward, my voice low. Then we don't wait for him to find us. We take the fight to him. Both of them stared at me. You mean, what? Michael asked carefully. We use the notebook as bait, I said. We set the terms. We decide where and when. And then we end this, once and for all. Emily shook her head, her face pale. Dad, you don't know what you're saying. He's not like other men. He doesn't play fair. I met her gaze. Neither do I. The silence stretched between us, heavy with the weight of what we were deciding. Finally, Michael nodded. If this is the only way, I'm in. Emily looked from me to Michael, her lips trembling. And if it goes wrong? I turned to the loft, where Sophie's soft breathing carried down to us. Then at least she'll know we fought for her. The storm was coming. I could feel it in my bones. Cole thought he was the hunter. Thought we were just prey, waiting in the woods for him to pick us off. But he didn't understand. I'd been prey before. I'd been hunted by poverty, by grief, by the weight of time. And every time, I'd survived. This time, I wasn't just surviving. This time, I was fighting back. The forest was still when I stepped out before dawn, the notebook tucked under my arm. The air smelled of wet earth, and the horizon glowed faintly, promising another day, though I didn't know if I would live to see the sun fully rise. Inside the cabin, Michael was cleaning his rifle. Emily sat at the table, pale, twisting her fingers, her eyes darting toward the door every few seconds. Sophie was still asleep upstairs, curled up with her stuffed rabbit. I looked at my daughter one last time. If you're still working with him, I said quietly, this is your last chance to tell me. Her eyes filled with tears. I'm not. Not anymore. You have to believe me. I studied her face. For the first time in years, she looked less like a stranger and more like the little girl I once carried on my shoulders through a 4th of July parade. I nodded. Then today, we finished this together. We set the trap at an abandoned barn 5 miles from the cabin. The place was half-rotted, its roof sagging, the fields around it dry and brittle. But it had one thing we needed: isolation. If shots were fired, no one would hear. Michael scouted the ridges, checking sight lines. Emily paced inside the barn, biting her nails. I laid the notebook on the dusty table, open to a page with Cole's name scrawled across it. He won't be able to resist, I murmured. Michael frowned. What if he brings 20 men? Then we make him believe he's already won, I said. Cole's greatest weakness isn't his muscle. It's his pride. We didn't wait long. Just before noon, dust rose on the dirt road. A black SUV rolled to a stop, its windows tinted, its engine humming like a predator's growl. The door opened. Cole stepped out. He wore a gray suit, sharp as a blade, his hair slicked back, sunglasses hiding his eyes. Behind him, 2 men climbed out, broad, armed, their faces blank. My heart thudded, but I forced myself to stay still. Michael was hidden in the loft of the barn, rifle trained on the doorway. Emily sat on a wooden crate, her hands shaking, but her jaw set. Cole entered like he owned the place, the boards creaking under his polished shoes. He pulled off his sunglasses, revealing eyes cold and empty. Well, he said, his voice smooth as oil. The old man finally grew a spine. I didn't flinch. This ends today. His gaze slid to Emily, and he smiled. You called me, didn't you, sweetheart? I knew you couldn't stay away. Emily's lips trembled. Not this time. Cole chuckled, shaking his head. You always were sentimental. That's why you'll never win. His eyes flicked to the notebook. He stepped closer, fingers brushing the pages. Ah, the ledger. My little insurance policy. I should have burned this years ago. You're not taking it, I said firmly. He looked at me like I was a stubborn child. Henry, you're out of your depth. You've been out of your depth since the day your wife died. You couldn't save her. You couldn't save your son. And you won't save your daughter. His words cut deep, sharper than any knife. But I stood my ground. Maybe not. But I'll save my granddaughter. At that, his smile faltered. Just for a moment. Then it happened fast. One of his men moved toward me. A shot rang out from the loft. Michael's rifle. The man collapsed. Chaos exploded. The second thug pulled his gun, firing toward the loft. Splinters flew as bullets tore into the wood. Michael returned fire. Cole lunged for the notebook, but Emily grabbed it first, clutching it to her chest. "No!" she screamed. He struck her hard across the face. She fell to the ground, blood on her lip, the ledger skidding across the floor toward me. I bent to grab it, but Cole's hand slammed onto mine. His grip was like iron. We struggled, our faces inches apart. I saw the madness in his eyes, the years of greed and cruelty boiling there. "You think you can beat me?" he hissed. "I own everything. Everyone. You're just an old man with nothing left." I drew in a ragged breath. "That's where you're wrong." With all the strength I had left, I slammed my forehead into his nose. He stumbled back, cursing, blood pouring down his face. I grabbed the ledger and shouted, "Michael, now!" Another shot rang out. This one hit true. Cole staggered, clutching his chest, his eyes wide in disbelief. Emily crawled to me, her hands shaking. "Dad, is it over?" Cole collapsed onto the dirt, gasping, his hand reaching for the ledger. His voice was hoarse, desperate. "You can't win." I looked down at him, this man who had destroyed so many lives, who had taken my daughter and twisted her soul. "No," I said quietly. "But you lost." His hand fell limp. His eyes went empty. The barn was silent again, except for Emily's sobs and Michael's heavy breathing as he climbed down from the loft. I held the ledger tight. For the first time in years, I felt something like peace. We drove straight to the police station in town. Emily walked in with the ledger in her hands, her face bruised, but her voice steady. She asked for Detective Ramos. When Ramos saw the notebook, her eyes widened. She flipped through the pages, her expression grim. "This is enough to bury half the men he worked with. Emily, Henry, you did the right thing." For Emily, those words were more than praise. They were freedom. The days that followed were a blur. The news spread quickly. Cole Warren, local businessman and criminal kingpin, killed in a shootout. Investigations launched. Arrests made. For the first time in years, Emily walked free. Not just from the law, but from the chains Cole had wrapped around her. Michael returned to his life, his eyes softer now when he looked at me, as if he finally understood the weight I'd carried all these years. And Sophie, sweet Sophie, she climbed into my lap one night back at the cabin, resting her head against my chest. "Grandpa," she whispered, "is the bad man gone now?" "Yes," I said, stroking her hair. "He's gone." She smiled, closing her eyes. "Then Mommy can be happy again." Tears burned in my eyes. For the first time in a long time, I let them fall. Life didn't suddenly become perfect. Scars remained, on Emily's face, on Michael's heart, on my soul. But there was light again. Laughter returned to our table. Sophie's drawings filled the walls with brighter colors. I found peace in the simple things. A cup of coffee on the porch. A walk through the woods. The sound of my granddaughter's laughter echoing like music. Cole thought he could break us. But in the end, he only brought us closer. And I, Henry Callahan, a 68-year-old man who had given his life to his family, finally learned the truth. Sometimes, the greatest battles aren't won with guns or fists. They're won with love. Did you like my story? And which city are you listening from? Let's meet in the comments. If you like the story, you can support me by sending a super thanks so I can keep bringing more stories like this. Thank you so much for your sweet support. I'm looking forward to your comments on the story. On the screen, you can see 2 new life stories that I highly recommend. There's so much more on my channel. Don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next life story.